All right, so we've been following along with Joe Biden's completely worthless and pointless negotiations with the Republican Party on his next infrastructure proposal. So before we get into the details of this latest massive concession that he has given to them, understand that his original plan, the $2.3 trillion over 8 years, is nowhere close to enough for what we need in this country. As I've said throughout my videos so far, the American Society of Civil Engineers, the actual experts on this issue, predict that we need about $5 trillion invested by 2025 in order to bring our infrastructure up to a grade of a B+. Okay, so just average infrastructure, we would need to spend about $1 trillion a year. Joe Biden's original plan would have equaled about $200 billion or so, $250 billion or so per year. So completely inadequate, less than 1/5 the size that the experts are predicting. Then afterwards, Joe Biden started negotiating with Republicans and lowered that down from the 2.3 to 1.7 to get closer to them. And then now we have just another massive concession that he is again doing for absolutely no reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and read some of the details here, and then I'll tell you why this is all completely pointless and worthless, and tells us everything that we need to know about where Joe Biden's head is at in all of this. So Biden offers to keep the 2017 Trump tax cuts intact, an infrastructure counteroffer to GOP. Okay, so understand this is a perfect example of the ratchet effect. Okay, if you've never heard of the ratchet effect, it's basically just this idea that when Republicans take office here in the United States, they crank everything to the right on policies, and then when Democrats take power, because they're not an actual left-wing party, they just block progress to the left. This is a perfect example of this, okay? Joe Biden, his original corporate tax rate plan was basically Donald Trump cut it from 35%, the corporate tax rate, cut it from 35% to 21%. Joe Biden's original plan was that he wanted to raise it back up, but only halfway to about 28%. So halfway between the 21% and 35%. So his original plan was not even close to enough, but that again is a perfect example of the ratchet effect, and this is an even more extreme version of this. So this is completely unacceptable, by the way. Trump's tax cuts in 2017, over 80% of the benefits of that went to the top 1%. So it was basically just a tax cut for the wealthiest of the wealthy. And Joe Biden apparently willing to put that on the table. Okay, so in a concession to Republicans, President Joe Biden proposed that instead of raising the corporate tax rate to pay for a bipartisan infrastructure package totaling at least $1 trillion, they'd work to ensure corporations don't exploit tax loopholes. But the president still supports raising the corporate taxes to cover other parts of his agenda, the White House said. Biden's latest infrastructure counteroffer proposed to Republican senators this week would keep intact President Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts that they oppose unwinding, calling it a red line in their negotiations with the White House. So Republicans are going to Joe Biden and saying, if you even touch corporate taxes, if you even touch the Trump tax cuts, then we will not vote for this infrastructure plan. So the lesson that Joe Biden should take from that conversation is, okay, well then fuck off. I'm not going to consult you on this infrastructure plan. We're going to go do it by ourselves, which by the way, they're going to have to do in the end regardless. They're going to have to use the process of budget reconciliation, which allows them to pass this bill eventually with only the 50 votes plus Kamala Harris being the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. They are never, ever going to get 10 Republicans to sign off on this infrastructure package. Period. End of story. It could have literally anything in it, and Republicans would still oppose it. Okay, so this is a delusional pursuit that Joe Biden is going on. And they continue. The tweaked proposal would no longer raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%, relying on other funding components of Biden's American Jobs Plan, beefing up tax enforcement on the country's wealthiest earners, and ensuring the largest corporations, some of which have avoided paying any taxes because of loopholes, pay at least a minimum of 15%. So listen. As a general idea, do I support cutting or closing the corporate loopholes and closing the tax loopholes that allow the wealthiest billionaires and corporations to get away with paying absolutely nothing? Yes, of course I support that. But we can do both things, okay? We can simultaneously raise the corporate tax rate while also making sure that corporations are paying the corporate tax rate, right? One of the big problems that we have in this country is that if you're actually a poor working class American, you are more likely to be targeted by the IRS to audit your taxes than somebody who is the wealthiest, than a corporation that is the wealthiest. Why? Because pursuing a lot of these corporations that don't pay their taxes, or a lot of these individuals that don't pay their taxes, is actually really expensive because they can afford huge teams of lawyers that can defend themselves, install the processes, etc., etc. So it's cheaper for the IRS to audit poor people, and that's exactly what they have been doing because they've been systemically underfunded for years and years and years. So one of the solutions that we can have to that is to significantly beef up the IRS's funding so that they can go and target those people who are not paying their fair share of taxes or aren't paying the taxes they are actually legally required to be paying. So closing the loopholes, beefing up the IRS, these are good things in and of themselves. But but not at the expense of the other parts of this, okay? Keeping the Trump tax cuts in place is psychotic. That is absolutely insane. It's ridiculous. This is the main thing that Trump left his presidency bragging about, okay? This was his main big accomplishment. And again, it was literally just a handout to the wealthiest Americans. So it's not something we should even entertain the idea of keeping. And beyond that, again, Joe Biden's original proposal was not even enough, according to what the experts are saying that we need to invest in infrastructure. So we're playing this game of bipartisan negotiations, all kabuki theater. It's all for nothing. It will produce no results. It will produce no Republicans actually voting for the bill in the end. And what'll just end up happening is Biden continues these negotiations in good faith with Republicans who are not acting in good faith. He waters it down significantly. And then we end up with an infrastructure package that Joe Biden is calling a once-in-a-generation investment that is completely inadequate to address the current situation with our infrastructure that is crumbling, that frequently gets a grade of a D- to a C to a C-. And that's what's going to end up happening. They're never going to vote for it in the end. And we're going to end up with a pathetic, weak infrastructure package. So my advice to Joe Biden is the exact same as it was when he began these negotiations for no reason at all, and that is stop the negotiations, pass this through the process of budget reconciliation, and go offer Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema whatever the fuck they want for their own states. Go tell Joe Manchin, I will literally give you any pork project for West Virginia that you want, and if you vote for this, and that's what you actually have to do. There's absolutely no reason, absolutely no justification to be even consulting the Republican Party on this issue. Ignore them and actually do what you fucking ran on.